The Derrick Henry injury fallout, that and more this week on the Footballguys Dynasty Show. And Jordan, we had one of the highest volume running backs in recent memory out for the rest of the season. Even if he tries to come back, it's probably not going to happen during the fantasy season, and it's dicey if he does so. We're left with Jerry McNichols in Dynasty, largely already rostered. And we have Adrian Peterson coming into the fold, and Deonta Foreman. And Mikhail Sargent, sorry, you didn't make it. What are some of your takeaways? Start with one, a big conversation, a major one for us in this show and this week in fantasy.
Yeah, obviously it's a huge loss given where he was at the position. I'll say this, 4.5 expected yards per rush. He was at 4.3 yards per attempt. So just above expectation. If you look at some of the advanced stats on Henry, I know it was a huge volume season, huge yardage season, all of that stuff. Almost every single advanced stat was actually the worst of his career, which is notable. And this is basically a volume-based production season. And so I actually look at it, and you and I were talking before the show, this is going to be a classic Ewing theory, and Tennessee is going to get better because they're going to do more efficient things like throw the ball a lot more, is my thought. And I actually think that Jeremy McNichols is going to be a beneficiary of this because I thought everything broke pretty well for him. How about being Mekhi Sargent, being on the practice squad, and they actually need someone and they cut you? Like, that's got to be just debilitating to your
Why was
psyche.
I here? Why was I here?
Right. But when you look at some of the stats for Henry, like going back, like this is the most, it's the most carries per missed forced tackle. Like you look at some of the after contact stuff this year, it's been some of his lowest stuff. It's just, I don't give much faith in terms of yards per attempt, but it's like the worst of his career as well. Like you look at all the stats, sort of add them up, and it's a ton of volume, but it wasn't a ton of efficiency. I actually think Tennessee can be better and surprise some people based on that. I think too, McNichols offers something in the passing game that they probably haven't had recently. And if they sort of are going to expand to throwing the ball a little bit more, I think he can be a big beneficiary. I actually like him, especially ahead of Peterson here for the next at least couple of weeks until Peterson gets up to par for sure, up to speed, I guess, for sure here.
Yeah, I think McNichols is going to be pretty interesting for PPR because now he can be in terms of them just spreading the ball and becoming a different offense. And I think Peterson is more of the same, right? I mean, you're trying to run power. You're going to be a lot more predictable with what's going to happen on this snap. And Henry played a ton, so there's a little more variety. I think it's going to be more predictable with Peterson. And I think it's going to take some time to get up to speed. And I think if it doesn't take time, that means he's in for specific plays, and they're probably not a lot of screen passes and wheel routes and complicated blitz pickups. Yes, he can be in great shape, but to say he's in great ball shape, I don't think he's been, like some of those spoof videos. Adult playing against children. Like, I don't think he's actually playing in pads, against others. Even just out there. So I think there is going to be a ramp up period, and you see these highlights, of Washington and stuff. That was like 3 years ago. I mean, to say that you aged greatly from 33 or 34 to 36 at the running back position is a big leap. So I'm really looking forward to. Both of us are heavily invested in the McNichols business. See, that's because we saw a player that we liked. We saw a clarified backup. We saw Derrick Evans for the last year and a half not be able to maintain health for any span of time. And so when McNichols, like Malcolm Brown and others, become so affordable, they have a 3-down profile, they have a good profile, they have a potentially clarified role, they become auto pickups, in our landscape of aggregating running back market share. And yeah, so both of us you're north of 60%. I think I'm in the 75% range across my leagues. And so this is a potential changer because he's not out in many of the dynasty leagues we are in for that reason. And Peterson is. So for Peterson, what's your first thought, having digested this for a little bit of time, in terms of him on the waiver wire this week?
I'm probably not going to be a big player in him. I'm on McNichols a ton. 60 north of 60%. I think it's 61, 62, something like that. Have him in Scott Fishbowl, where I'm number 8 overall in Scott Fishbowl, and so going to add a little turbocharging to the old running back core there. Listen, here's the thing with I can see a scenario, and I said this in our group chat. I could see a scenario where McNichols is a league winner. I'm not sure I see that in Adrian Peterson's range of outcomes, just because, I mean, he's at an advanced stage. We've seen him. He's been a declining player, and he's gotten other interest and not gotten any bites from other teams so far. And we're halfway through the season. It gives me just a lot of pause in terms of thinking there's a lot there for him. And the other thing too, like this week, it obviously broke well for Jeremy McNichols, but it really broke well in the sense of they didn't trade for Melvin Gordon, right? They didn't trade for Marlon Mack. They didn't trade for Ronald Jones, who three names that I thought were potential destination, potential options for them if they were going to go out into the trade market. They didn't trade for any of those guys. So now Jeremy McNichols' competition is Deonta Foreman, who keeps bouncing around, and they know him. He was there a little bit, but then they chose to take McNichols over him, and a 35-year-old, 36-year-old Adrian Peterson, who's been a declining player for a while. This is an unbelievable
win for
spot.
Yes, it's a win for McNichols. I mean, of all the options, I mean, if Gordon comes in here, we're having a different conversation.
Totally different conversation.
Like Peterson was basically, because you figure they have to do something to assume that they have Blasting Game and Sargent and McNichols.
Where's David Fluellen, by the way? Where is David Fluellen?
Exactly. Bring in Fluellen and Ryan Nall and just get us all excited. But yeah, to assume that that's all they were going to do. And McNichols, not 2-3 weeks ago, was dinged up. Let's not forget that he was questionable coming into a week, and it was Darrington Evans the 1 week he was healthy. Pretty much, that's where we were, and that's how maybe McNichols is out there in a rogue league or two. That's how it occurred, and so, and this is why you just have to vice grip running backs that have clarity, because if you float them out there, that might be the week that same thing with these backup quarterbacks, right? I mean, all of a sudden you're like, oh, Winston will be fine. And that's the week, you never know. It could be the week that running back, that quarterback is not fine. And I do think Peterson is best case scenario because he provides nothing in the passing game. And frankly, we always talk about optimized touches where, let's say Peterson gets a good chunk of the goal line. Well, at least a team that we think is going to do a lot more spread, a lot more pass-centric stuff. Let's get the pass catcher. Let's lock that down. I mean, we saw with the Chiefs this past week, right? Everyone's like, Derek Gore's getting all these touches. Well, guess what? It was Darrell Williams getting the pass catching work. That's what matters. That's what gets you into double digits pretty easily in PPR on a weekly basis. A touchdown is just gravy. Devontae Booker, ask him the same thing. Get me the targets. And McNichols is going to get himself the targets. Let me ask you about Henry. Where are we seeing with Henry? I was actually looking up his contract. The next time for fantasy we meaningfully see him, he's going to be week 1 next year, 28.2 years old, and he's coming into a year where he's owed $15 million for the cap hit, dead cap 6, and at 28, you figure the next year 15, dead cap 3. That's going to be a firm and final conversation, I'm imagining. But next year, there's some latitude. You could see it go either way. 245, 250 plus pounds on a recovering foot. Like, what's the aggregate damage there of getting back up to speed? That force, others in the medical community have talked about, wide receivers have had good success coming back from this. Running back 250 pounds with a workload like this, or an expected workload coming back, uncharted waters, or a lot different conversation than someone that's 195 pounds and getting, 8 touches, 8 targets a week.
Yeah, for sure. I think you really interesting on the contract stuff. For sure. I was comping him to like Zeke in my mind about how I would sort of go that route. I mean, just from an aging perspective, he's outproducing what his cost should be, right, this year. And you are seeing signs of decline, right? That's hidden up by a ton of volume, but it's like you work, it's like your salary going up because you decide to work twice as much twice as many hours.
You're working 60 hours a week, and you're like, yeah, I'm making more, but you're making
right.
less per hour. Than
right. You're making 2/3 of what you were making last year, right? I mean, that's not it looks great in the bottom line, but in the overall aspect of it, it's not that good. I mean, that's a little bit of the concern there that I have with Henry. So I think he's going to be. He was in the 8 to 10 range, the position sort of coming into the year, and I can't imagine that it's going to be. That it's going to be anywhere near that, because you have a 28-year-old running back that's coming back from a foot injury. I mean, that's not a great recipe for long-term success, and that's not something the market's going to overly value. I guess I think the other way to think about this is like, if you could take a situational shot on him, if you're not contending, and sort of try to trade a situational player to him. Is that how do you feel between him and Leonard Fournette, for example? How do you feel about Darrell Henderson? Maybe that's a type of package you can get done. Probably not straight up, but something in that sphere. Maybe you give a little bit more than Darrell Henderson. Those sorts of guys that maybe you don't necessarily feel great about going into 2022, but you're basically taking the next half of the season here and sort of taking that discount. But again, I don't think you want to go overboard in terms of treating him as a top 10 running back, because I don't think that's where the market's going to be come January.
Yeah, the age difference, like I have it color coded on my rankings, and yeah, the 28 stands out. I mean, that is far. That is like redlining the peak window. Like, you go to about 27, he was at the end of that. He's been an outlier. He was a little bit of a late bloomer, in terms of when he got rolling with volume, but he's had monster volume. And what they always say is, I mean, guys that can handle that, you're not necessarily more likely for an injury. You just shown a durability, Frank Gore style. I mean, if you're used to that, that's what happens, and you've shown a propensity to have that durability factor. So yeah, I mean, I moved him down. He's about, with that age acceleration, with some of the risk factors now going into it, a lost half a season for a 27-year-old running back is a big deal. As opposed to Cam Akers losing a year, or J.K. Dobbins. I mean, it's far different from their perspective. And so for Henry, he's around running back 20 for me, and that's about as far. I would say that's about as far as you can go. If you wanted to be really depressive, you could go lower than that, but not very far.
It's tough to get further than that, because then you get into guys that aren't insulated by anything.
Right. Like, I do think the Darrell Henderson, Cam Akers thing is going to be really interesting.
Right.
That if everyone assumes Cam Akers is the play for next year, and it's just assumptive that, oh yeah, like, let's just rewind, and Henderson didn't do anything this year, that doesn't count. Right. That doesn't count. Like, he was a legit prospect and player, and people now are assuming that Akers, who did it for a smattering of games a year and a half ago, by the time we get there, that he's going to be, oh yeah, workhorse. That's the guy. Both on rookie deals. To me, it's a straight up battle. I don't know. A lot of leverage in that backfield. But yeah, I think Derrick Henry, like you said, could almost be an exploratory buy for folks that are 22 centric in their approach right now.
He has to be behind Jacobs and Montgomery, right? Like, that has to be the sphere of the position which you have him. And I think you probably, given all the risks, you probably take them ahead of him, would sort of be my thought right now, right? Especially if you're sort of doing it straight up right now, because you get this year. Right? I mean, you're getting. Well, yeah. This could be 20% of the rest of Henry's career right now. So I mean, you're looking at a big advantage there, having them instead of him.
Yep, and who knows what Tennessee, like you said, what if they find a different offense? What if they find a new voice in terms of, maybe we don't want to give him 380 carries next year. Like, maybe we at 28, we don't think he's capable of that. Then are they willing to pay him 15? Because if that's not our approach with him, then maybe we don't want to pay that. Maybe we want to try to negotiate. There's a lot of wrinkles that can happen between now and paying bills time in your fantasy lineup in week 1 next year. So, and the installation wheels are firmly off. All right, this is Chad Parsons, Jordan McNamara, episode 76 of the Footballguys Dynasty Show. Want to mention Props Fantasy, the newest way to play fantasy football, using the teams you already have. So what happens is you import, you take your lineups, and you challenge your league mates. It's a one-off, 1-week scenario over there, and you can do it the props community. You can do your friends, other leagues you have. Any given week, you can just create a challenge, a new head-to-head lineup and venture there. You put in your sleeper, Yahoo, ESPN is coming soon over there at Props, and you get ready to win some money. Best of all, no sharks in the water. You're going to play with people you already know. And the more people you play with, the more you win, period. Head over to propsfantasy.com/guys, special code there to support Football Guys, support this show. Set up your rosters, fill out your first challenge today. All right. And we've got some trades from this week. Data points are going to be sparse. We're going to have some Derrick Henry trades next week. I promise you. We'll try to track those down for some data points and discussion points. And heck, we're going to have a data point there on Peterson and McNichols and the new look Tennessee offense as well. But first one here, and talk about a big breakout coming off of week 8, is Michael Pittman. So this is Michael Pittman for DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins could be out a little bit, had a long catch, and then we pretty much didn't see him again. And Kyler Murray's on the mend as well. What do you think about here with Pittman versus Hopkins?
I mean, that puts them both in like the teens, right? Isn't that where they kind of would be in that valuation?
Pittman's probably higher than people are thinking, and Hopkins lower than you're probably thinking on face value of that trade. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Pittman is deserves to be there. I think is sort of the way he's tracking. Again,
I reran some career arc comps, and with what he's doing this year, he's high enough with what he's done. And I don't know what on that depth chart is going to stop him. Hilton has been in and out. I don't think he's going to be a factor anyway. You look at the rest of that depth chart. Yeah. Like it doesn't seem like this top 24 type season is going to stop for him.
No, I don't think so. I think he doesn't like this isn't quarterback inflated either, right? By the way, is the Carson Wentz turnover, is that the worst turnover you've ever seen? Because I
actually thought about it this way, and I thought I had instant clarity in the moment because I think about it this way. Let's say he takes a safety, and I can't remember the exact dynamics, but I remember if he took a safety, they're punting the ball away, and the time factor in the possession was hugely important. So if he did take a safety, I think he was right near the goal line.
He had a minute to throw the ball away before that.
No, I understand all that point. I know he brain froze, but like in the moment of like trying to get the ball out, that I kind of understand it because again, giving up the touchdown was, in my opinion, the only way that they could win the game. Because if you have the safety and you punt it, if they got the ball back, they were going to have no time, almost no time. And I know it sounds weird, but it was sort of like the open the floodgates and let them score a rushing touchdown sort of feel. I mean, I know he wasn't trying to do that, but I just, that was I kind of got it. I was like, oh, a touchdown's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. Okay.
Because at least you get the ball. Because the safety and if he had held it and he was down at the 5-yard line, different conversation, but I don't think it was that clear. But yes, that was, compared to the Sanchez fumble I saw a few different times of like, I don't know, running into some offensive lineman's backside, that is a new level of anything. So that's a tough conversation to start. Exactly. But yeah, Pittman's definitely a riser for me. And he's up in the top 25 or so for me, which again, I wasn't overly high on him coming out, the skeptical day 2 wide receiver. You got to really prove it to me. And he's doing enough for me to rerun things midseason and see where we stand. I still, Hopkins is an all-timer. I don't know.
That is true.
I know the market value could say that this is an easy win in the offseason, but Hopkins is the type. This isn't like a bad thing like Keenan Allen to just keep holding. I mean, that's not more top 24 seasons going forward. I think, this is not an open and shut case, I'll say. All right, we got a Justin Jefferson trade. So we're perked up officially.
I'm listening.
And this is viewed as I'm going all in. And it was in a one quarterback non-PPR and they really needed quarterback. Matthew Stafford and Keenan Allen is who they acquired for Justin Jefferson, a 22 first, and Ramondre Stevenson.
So someone got the best wide receiver in Dynasty and a first in a trade, and it's for Keenan Allen and Stafford.
Yeah.
I mean, you're smashing the Jefferson side. I don't care if you have a needed quarterback. Figure it out for some way cheaper. I mean, you could pay a lot less for Tom Brady. You can pay a lot less for a variety of different players. I mean, this is and I love all of the players involved. This is a smashing success for the Jefferson side.
I guess if you wanted to squint and say, I'm trying not for this to be horrible, you hope for the next couple of years Keenan Allen is close to Jefferson. So that it's really a first for Stafford is what I would say. You hope for that. Now, obviously, market value wise, that's not going to really occur, but the brass tacks of your team, let's hope that that's what happens, because Jefferson will be insulated a lot longer. And Stafford, again, the insulation of a one quarterback quarterback is not really. So even if it's a hot quarterback market, and I think this was a Zealots league, which is like deeper variety and all those types of things where maybe quarterbacks. I'm in a 16 teamer where quarterbacks are relatively difficult to get, but still, you just keep hunting and pecking. You just keep grinding your way of sending out offers. Teams fall out of it. You try to sculpt backups, and because Stafford is not gonna. I mean, he's good, but he's not gonna make such a difference that this is the only way to get anything of the sort done. I mean, you got to have a flip guy that you can put or give a first without Jefferson for like you're saying. I mean, explore every quarterback that's on a bad team.
Yeah,
that's
give
over the
a
age
first
of 30.
straight up for you could give a first straight up, and just think of all the teams that have drafted a rookie quarterback that have hit. Right, like we talk about a constant theme of the show is there's always quarterbacks out there that people have a surplus of and start one that they can't trade for a first. Right, if that's what you want to do, you can almost always do that deal.
And even if you're dying on the vine, like I think they mentioned, if memory serves, when I was putting this together, they have like Bridgewater and somebody else, and they view that as like, I'm dying on the vine. Well, you're not dying on the vine. You actually have quarterbacks. And I would also say this is a pretty good week. In a one quarterback, you've got changing landscape on a variety of fronts. Mike White may be a bit available. Maybe you get lightning in a bottle for a few weeks. You feel better about that. You got the Saints situation. Is Taysom Hill out there? You take an upside shot. Maybe he's starting, not this week. Maybe it's next week. If it's super deep, what if you take a spec spot on Philip Rivers or something? I mean, I'm just saying, like, you can take, like, I would rather take roster spots and do it as opposed to something like this of like, this is the only way to get it done. And if you had tractor beam on Stafford, we've said before, I mean, you got to look at profiles and not necessarily get enamored. That's the whole part of, well, if you want a certain player, they're on one team. So that's a really dangerous road. That's why I love selling players and not buying players.
Right.
Because
I have a couple Henry trades since the injury. Do you want to do them?
Let's hit it. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Here we go. So Derrick Henry and these are super flex trades. So
Do I have to write these down like you?
Nope. Derrick Henry for a first and a second next year.
Is it super flex?
Super flex. All of these are super
flex.
I
was actually gonna say I would think Derrick Henry for a first is probably sort of that line. I think you got to take the picks. I mean, I think in super flex and to quote you, I mean, the insulation you're going to have with those picks through the offseason to do whatever you want. Buy a running back that's Derrick Henry like in the offseason when that pick comes home and on the clock. You probably have options. So I think you have to take the pick.
Can you take that second and another second and give it for Darrell Henderson right now? The answer is probably yes. Can you take that second and give it for Fournette right now? You know what I mean? There's so many. I think there's a lot of insulation there. You do that. You could pass through that trade a lot of profit.
Just you have options. I mean, couldn't you give the second and something else and get Cordero Patterson? Right. I mean, just thinking about this year or whatever. I mean,
totally.
Yeah, so, all right, what's the other
one? Joe Mixon for Derrick Henry straight up.
Just had an extended conversation on a show about Joe Mixon. Well, Joe Mixon, I mean, as much as I bag on Joe Mixon in 2 or 3 different aspects, I think Mixon is a slam dunk there.
Okay.
I mean, I think he's an aggregator, and I have a lot of nits to pick with him. But man, he's a full 2+ years younger, and he's locked in next year and locked in on a team that is going to be around him.
Yeah. I think I'm with you on that one. And again, especially if you're contending right now, I mean, just
you're getting half a season, right? Reset it to a guy that's in the top 15.
Right. And that at Derrick Henry's stage of his career, that is a lot of time.
But what you're saying is, so for Adrian Peterson's age, a half a season is everything? Is that what you're saying? This half season is everything to Adrian Peterson.
It's a lifetime. It is a lifetime.
It's the rest of this football lifetime. That's a very good one. Yes.
All right. A first, a third, Derrick Henry and Keenan Allen for Nick Chubb and Calvin Ridley. Lots of moving pieces there.
That was a lot of stuff. So wait, let's do the proxy here. So you just said Calvin Ridley and Chubb.
Yeah.
So let's say Henry. Let's call it Henry in a second for Chubb. Wait, no. Let's call it Henry in a first for Chubb. What do you think is the fair if we're breaking this down into pieces?
I mean, I think it's all risk tolerance on Ridley, right? I mean, if you're still treating Ridley as like a top 5 wide receiver, which I don't think he can at this point.
Let's call him a top 15 or whatever.
Then how much different is he then? Right. If that's your prism that you're looking
Sure.
at him in, how much different is he than Keenan Allen?
No, let's call those similar.
Yeah. And then you're given, and then it's basically Henry and let's call it Henry and a first for Nick Chubb.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Chubb is on the older side, but yet you're getting younger. I mean, you're getting, so he's going to be 26, 7, something like that next year. Still a year and a half younger. In prime running back years, isn't a year and a half or a year and a half to 2 years kind of worth a first?
Probably.
Like just in an offhanded conversation, in a bar. I mean, I think that's probably, you're like, what bar are these guys going to? They're talking career arcs and prime windows for running backs. They're not.
It wasn't one where I was particularly.
They're not drinking at that bar,
right?
They're having a sarsaparilla.
But let me take the flip side of that, because how different are Keenan Allen and Nick Chubb for the rest of the year, and how confident do you feel in Ridley? Right, because isn't that a different way to look at this? Because
is it weird that I say I'm not surprised, because watching those games, it seems like Ridley wasn't in it. I mean, I meant mentally and sort of commitment factor. Like, it just seemed like he was out there taking up space. So it's weird that the news came out, and I was like, I'm watching these games, and I'm like, where is this dominant guy that has an edge to him that was like out to prove the world wrong? And that's when Julio Jones was playing.
Right.
Anyway, but yeah, I mean, beyond anything, he's got to get right. So that he can someday, the second step is being right football wise. But because we know, I mean, he has proven himself easily that he can play. Like, it's not a question mark at this point. But man, yeah, I mean, do you have to consider him a zero for the rest of the year on a team going nowhere? I mean,
see, that's the thing about taking that side. Is the more I look at the construct of this deal, the more I look at taking that side of it. This isn't a win now trade for you, right? Because
no, it's not.
Because Allen and Chubb are close enough, and if you're sort of in a flex conversation, that it's not going to be an immense difference. Yep. And then you're trading basically a first, a third, and Henry for Calvin Ridley, who might be structurally as unavailable to you as Derrick Henry is right now. I mean, I think at this, the way I'm talking myself into, do something else with, don't do this to get Nick Chubb and Ridley, especially if you're contending, because I'm taking the Henry and Allen side of this, because you can get much more. I think you can get better and different assets that can actually help you this year, more so than the Ridley side, which you're taking a ton of risk on.
I mean, for this year, wouldn't you rather have Michael Thomas? The calculus of Michael Thomas versus the calculus of Calvin Ridley?
And you figure that's at a discount, right? Like, you're going to have to give Michael Thomas plus for Ridley, right?
Yeah, I think that would still be the case. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Interesting. I love the construct of some of these, because you sort of go through that. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I never thought I would say this. We got a straight up running back trade, but that Michael Carter is the one that's the contending side. I never thought I would say that. So he's coming.
You mean Michael Carter, running back one for the past 2 weeks?
Yeah,
Michael Carter.
He's coming off. Yeah, he's coming off his by far his best NFL game. I will say it was a game where Mike White threw to running backs almost half the time. Ty Johnson was eating as well. The perfect game. Bengals are like, we're seeing that in our nightmares. we're seeing yak for running backs in our nightmares. So this was Michael Carter to a contender and J.K. Dobbins to a non-contender.
Wow.
Imagine that going down in August.
Yeah. I still can't feel that great about putting Michael Carter in the lineup. Like, I know what he just did. It's not going to be. It's not going to be
all rainbows, butterflies, and 18 targets or whatever he got.
No,
Roy Halu style. It's not going to be that all over again every week. I mean, honestly, most of the season, this offense, and if they go back to Zach Wilson, that's a separate conversation, by the way. Mm-hmm. I mean, it looked horrible. And you know what? It had a glorious game.
Yes. Yeah. So I have a funny story from the weekend. So I'm in a pool. It's one of these survivor pools. So you pick one game every week, and you win, you keep going, you lose, you're out. And so it's on a website that.
And you can't repeat, right?
You can't repeat. The website is frankly not suited for like 1995, let alone 2021. And so I went in with like 10 minutes to spare. I was taking the Bengals and I could not upload the pick. And I was like really mad. I was not happy. And I was like,
Maybe
I texted the guy.
Upload the pick. Like it just something happened.
It took forever to load the website. It just took forever and ever and ever. And by the time I got
so you picked nobody.
I picked nobody, and I was so mad about it.
Which means you were eliminated. Well,
I was eliminated.
Sometimes they say you can still pick a game that hasn't kicked off yet. If it got to be 1 o'clock.
The rule is you can't. And so I was like, I was.
But then you were out anyway. Did you? So you felt better?
Yeah, I was like, I was going to lose anyways.
I was out anyway. All that stress and who would have thought? Because you probably thought you're like, oh, this feels good. Feels good. Yeah. Mike White at quarterback. This is going to be good. It's strange because I watched him the week before and I was like, this guy's sneaky competent. But a lot of times you get that, rush of a relief appearance. Mm-hmm. And it's not quite the same. And a lot of people think the Colts are going to light him up this week. Mm-hmm. We'll see. I mean, I'm sure they're going to take out the check down. I'm sure they're going to try to reduce. They're a pretty good tackling team. I just think the Mike White versus Zach Wilson. Like, what if? Just what if? I just like part of me just hopes Mike White actually is like this might be a Kirk Cousins RG3 of like what if the later guy is better? Just what if? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Not impossible.
It's not impossible, and the most likely answer is he's not going to be. But you're going to get another shot right now. Like he could totally disprove himself and collapse on his face this week. But like if he does it. You're like, holy, and I mean, we were discussing that in the staff chat as well. Of like, you sort of hope to be in a situation where you have multiple shots at this, and you sort of fall just totally backwards into it. I think at that point, right? Just don't rush back.
As an NFL team, you shouldn't care, right? If you get quarterback right, I mean, obviously, if you get Zach Wilson right, you look really smart. But wouldn't you say if you got a guy that was drafted even later, right, you look even smarter? I don't know. I would want to just get it right, regardless if that was a guy I got off the street, Taylor Heineke style, or if I signed someone for low level, if I made a Matt Stafford trade, or drafted someone 101. I wouldn't like if you get it right. I don't think anyone cares.
I think the most amazing thing about the entire situation is that they gave up picks. They gave up pick compensation for Joe Flacco.
Yeah, on a team going nowhere, mind you.
Right.
So Flacco does what? Like Flacco should have been something the Saints would explore, right?
Right. Yes.
And now, I mean, like Flacco actually makes sense for the Saints.
Well, they're better off to just cycle through, kind of like you're saying with Mike White. They're better off to just cycle through practice squad guys. I mean, this is like being a rebuilding team in Dynasty, right? I'm just going to continue to cycle through guys on the back end of my roster. And I don't care who they are, where they come from, whatever. I'm just looking for either an uptick or to find, just one man's trash, another man's treasure type deal. Like that's just entirely what I'm trying to do. I don't want to hang on to the Adrian Petersons of the world. I want to hang on to, with the hope that Jeremy McNichols becomes something, or with the hope that, JaMychal Hasty becomes something, right? Ty Johnson, right? You're just trying to find those situations. I mean, that's exactly what the Jets should be doing. And instead, they're the team that is in Dynasty that's sitting at 2-6 right now, that's trying to fill out that's trading for a committee running back to put in their flex spot, right? I mean, that's the Dynasty equivalent, and it's just a really bad move. So, I mean, that's just continue to throw shots at backup quarterbacks for nothing. Like a la Mike White, a la the way Dallas found Cooper Rush. Just keep sort of doing that. I mean, talk about a team. Talk about Dallas, a team that just continuously fires on quarterbacks that cost nothing and that hit. I mean, going back to Romo and then Dak. I mean, just keep throwing assets at them, and I mean, we can learn a lot from that in Dynasty as well.
And people were surprised. I remember I was when you start looking at backup quarterback depth charts around the NFL, and you get all the way. They had someone else, right? Garrett Gilbert played decently in the preseason. Mm-hmm. Like he was one we thought might have been even the favorite for that number 2 job, and then it ends up where you look around, you're like John Travolta, and that GIF. You're just like Cooper Rush, last one there,
right?
Last one there. But yeah, 2 great stories, and yeah, I mean, just throwing dimes. And for anyone that wants to say Amari Cooper isn't good, anyone wants to say that, I mean, they win that game because of Amari Cooper.
Right.
I love when it came out that Amari Cooper told CeeDee Lamb, "No, you go sit over there." I didn't know, honestly.
I didn't know this trick.
Yeah, it's like Lamb's like, "Please, sir, may I have another?" And he's, may I have a serving of porridge?" He's like, "No, starve in the corner. I'm gonna get 2 servings. I'm the one with the good genes. I can really go somewhere in this world."
The second set of gloves the entire time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, my hands are starting to sweat. Ooh. Totally redeem yourself. But yeah, like I didn't know when you're in the huddle, it's literally like, oh, you want this one or you want me to get it? Like right. I didn't know it worked like that. I thought you literally, the X was on this side or the Y was on that. Like and the Z, I thought it was declared.
I'm pretty sure CeeDee Lamb was trying to play shenanigans, is what was going on.
Well, at least they're staying loose. Right. At least they're staying loose, and then Amar goes out there and just monsters. Like, no, I'll just win the game. Don't worry about it, kid.
Let me see if I can slide this one by the backup quarterback, is what it sounded like to me.
Don't worry. You can have this one in your contract year. But yeah, Cooper just goes out there, and he's still not 100%. And he just wins the game. He goes out there, a la a quarterback, and makes 3 great plays and just down the field win the game.
Mm-hmm.
Good on Cooper Rush, but again, just as good of a play by Cooper, because he's not a contested catch or a jump ball guy, and he just goes out there and does that. I want to remind you about the easiest way to be a Football Guys free email update subscriber. You get over there to the top of the homepage of footballguys.com. All the news on a weekly basis, because you don't want to miss it. This is a huge week. We just saw Noah Fant go on the COVID list. We're waiting on guys to potentially come back. You're waiting on situations at quarterback like Kyler Murray. Is he going to play? Dak is another watch this week. You want to be up to date every single week, every single night from Joe Bryant. He's going to have the news distilled down for your dynasty teams for an action plan for waivers, also for first come, first serve. As didn't you call it, Jordan, like the second bite from the apple there, that like Friday, Saturday, Sunday period of pickups and optimization for your roster and potentially your lineup as well. All right, so we got a couple of quotes from the Dynasty Forum this week. One of them, this was interesting. So it's actually a trade. So they traded a mid-22 second for Adrian Peterson, David Johnson, Devonta Freeman, and a 4th. And the comment is, Derrick Henry died. I had to do something. So let's trade for 3 old running backs. Is that a way to fix it, Jordan?
I mean, the way to fix it is always with cheap volume that doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah,
and,
like a second.
Right.
Guys like Devonta Freeman and David Johnson, who barely played, and we thought he barely played because they were going to trade him.
Right. Go ahead, Rex Burkhead. Right. I mean, go ahead. Like, yeah. I mean, I want to do like an anatomy of like how I acquired 60% of Jeremy McNichols on my teams. Like,
how many were from last August, Jordan? Be honest. Probably a third of them were from last August, and they made it all the way through.
Yeah, it wasn't. This is another one of those situations where it's like Carolina was last year, because I had some Reggie Bonifant, and it ended up being like I wasn't sure, so I ended up backfilling my lack of Reggie Bonifant with Mike Davis, and it ended up being Mike Davis. This was similarly situated in the fact that I wasn't sure if it was Darrington Evans or McNichols, and if I knew it was McNichols, Evans.
And
I figured it would be Evans.
Honestly,
right.
If it was health, I think it would be Evans, but he's
right.
not.
Right. It's not. So,
Hey, remember when we didn't know that Cordero Patterson was going to be the number 2 in Atlanta? Remember when it was all
the
Wayne
number
Gallman?
2 or the number 1, right?
The twist, yeah, exactly. The twists and turns of late August into September Atlanta Falcons. I mean, when they signed Wayne Gallman, and Gallman goes for big money, and it's like, well, the first depth chart they listed Patterson. Who knew?
Right.
They only listed him at running back 2 because he was wide receiver 2 as well. That's what that's the only reason he was that low. Right. But yeah, I'm fine spending a third, but I think it's so fertile if you just make it a priority to just think running back that you're going to be fine without actually trading picks. Again, I like in the offseason, I traded thirds for like things like Madison or Gus Edwards or, bets that I liked versus the rookies that were available at the time. But like in general, you should be fine at running back, just doing waiver stuff and, drafting guys as applicable, whether it's a startup draft or generally rookie draft. So or add-ons to other trades. So I don't think you actually should ever be in a position to do this per se.
Right. I mean, just in the last 2 weeks, you could have been in a situation where McNichols was available, where Ty Johnson was available, where Boston Scott was available, where Rex Burkhead was available.
You could have all these guys. Like coming into this week, you could have had the other three already. You pick up Burkhead this week, who's probably going to go under the radar. And even if, and to be fair, to say you have nothing else, I mean, I know you probably lost your running back one. We get it. But like, I wouldn't be surprised if between Peterson, Johnson, and Freeman, you don't get a game over 15 points the rest of the year from all of them combined. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if none of them do much of anything for you, period. And I wouldn't be surprised if you get to a point that you drop 1 to 2 of them, but between now and the end of the fantasy season, just outright drop, whether it's because they got injured or it's just they've eroded. I mean, Devonta Freeman turns into running back 3 on the depth chart again because they just pass it around. Who knows? Oh, all right. And then we got one more here. Jameis Winston isn't worth much, even in Superflex, and now he's hurt and may not even have a job next year.
There's a lot there. I think it's probably worse. I think the format matters. I mean, I'm in some 28-man leagues where that might sound deep, but given the format and given the starting requirements and super flex, it's tight end premium. You know that you're rostering a ton of running backs. Like he is firmly on the cusp. I mean, I don't feel great about him walking into a 2022 starting job. They buried him this year. They absolutely buried him this year. And I know he sort of performed well in that role, but they buried him and no one else was interested. That gives me a lot of pause in terms of that. I mean, I think if I'm forcing my way to keep him through, but I don't think if you're playing 22-man Superflex, he might not be a keeper, depending on
22. I mean, that's super. You can only keep you can't keep any backups.
Right. I think 28. I think 28. If you're playing some tight end premiums and working tight end through your flex, I think if you're good, it's a close call. I'm forcing myself to try, but again, if I'm rostering McNichols, if I'm rostering, Ty Johnson, if you sort of get to that point, that's the decision you're going to force yourself to make. And if you're contending right now, I mean, can you flip what I would before cutting him? I would try and get anything for him I could, go 2 for 1, go any sort of upgrade I could. And I think maybe there's a market for that, but I'm not sure he walks into a 2022 job and he might not be healthy.
No, I know. I will say, yeah, complicated recovery here. And also, I mean, it's not a very good market. I mean, let's assume Roethlisberger is retired. You've got Winston, Bridgewater, Tyrod Taylor, Mariota, Trubisky. I mean, it's not Dalton, Fitzpatrick. It's not great. So to say he couldn't be the top option there, health is going to be a big part of it. Also, we have one more thing to cover here. We got Taylor in the chat. He said he just traded Edwards-Helaire, DJ Moore, and Alexander Madison for DeAndre Swift and Dallas Goedert. And again, needed to make a big deal after losing Henry. And again, pretty good team otherwise. I think that's pretty nice. I mean, because DJ Moore and maybe half of Edwards-Helaire, if not more, for Swift, and then Madison for Goddard. Goddard is I'm not even going to say a sneaky play. He is a free agent at the end of the offseason, so I don't think that's bad news for him by any vantage point. So yeah, I think getting Swift now and that insulation factor, and he has good enough wide receivers that again, you can soften the DJ Moore loss there. We're still kind of waiting. He's still, in relative terms, simmering. He's still got a lot of upside beyond what we've seen. So I think that's warranted. Taylor, good job.
Yeah.
All right. So that's going to do it this week. We talked a lot about trading. We got some live fire Derrick Henry talk as well. And again, I think it's a really important situation about Peterson and about McNichols as how this season ends up, and especially how this waiver period with Peterson ends up. We talked a lot about trading, a little bit about Michael Pittman, Hopkins, Michael Carter, among others, and why not to trade Justin Jefferson in a 1 quarterback league for things like Matthew Stafford plus. All right. So I'm Chad Parsons. He is Jordan McNamara. And until next week, good luck in your dynasty leagues. Be it pure.